Hey YouTube, welcome back to Dwayne's World. So are you a fan of weeds? I don't think any of us are. So you want to find out how to prevent them? Well, this video's for you. Alright, so welcome back to Season 3, Episode 12 here on Dwayne's World. And this is an important one. Especially important if you're brand new to lawn care and you really care about preventing those winter weeds. You know, the funny thing about Bermuda is during the growing season, we absolutely want to make sure it's its greenest, its thickest, and we get the great stripe action that we all love to see. But in the fall, when our lawns go to sleep, the last thing we want to see is green, right? And that's the ironic part. So I remember when I first started in lawn care, and I had weeds throughout my lawn. I thought the way you get rid of this problem is by using a herbicide. And you can use herbicides, obviously, to be able to take care of a weed problem. However, it works much better if you prevent those weeds from ever showing up in the first place. And that took me a little while to understand when I first got into lawn care. And if you think about it, you can actually save money by using a good pre-emergent versus using a good herbicide. When you look at the price of something like Celsius and you compare that to like a prodiamine, it is literally almost twice the cost to get a good herbicide as it would have been for you to just get a pre-emergent. Now, does that mean that a pre-emergent is going to prevent 100% of the weeds from showing up in your lawn? No, absolutely not. But there's a couple different options that you can go with. Now, sometimes people wonder, well, Dwayne, which one is better? Which one should I really go with? What I would say is, number one, it's more important that you put it down at the right time of year versus what the active ingredient is. Now, the right time to throw down a pre-emergent in the fall season is when our soil temperatures are starting to reach that 75 degrees and getting cooler. In the spring season, it's the opposite, where we want to put it down before the soil gets to 55 degrees and warmer. So the reason why these two temperatures are important, because crabgrass in the spring season germinates when the soil temperature is greater than 55 degrees. On the flip side, in the winter weeds start to take off when the soil temperature gets below 75 degrees. Now, that's why I say it's more important that you're timely than what active ingredient you're actually going with. Now, one thing to keep in mind is because all of us live in different parts of the country, your soil temperature may vary from mine during certain parts of the year versus others. Some of us have longer growing seasons, some of us have shorter growing seasons. Some of us have longer winters, some of us have shorter winters. So it really just depends on the area in which you live. Now, when we talk about active ingredients, before we get into that, there's really the application and how we apply those pre-emergents that I want to just talk about. People ask me, Dwayne, should I go with the granular or should I use a liquid? I'll tell you, by using a liquid, it's actually much more accurate. And you're getting much better coverage whenever you're spraying it on your lawn. And if you think about it, it's because it's a liquid versus a granular that needs to break down and go into the soil. It's automatically in that liquid form, so it'll be able to go to work that much quicker. Now, but when it comes to the difficulty of which one is easier, by far it's easier to put down a granular. So I would recommend, if you're brand new to lawn care or you don't have a backpack sprayer, absolutely go with a granular pre-emergent, and that will suit you very well and you'll get a really good result. Now, when we talk about the active ingredient, I think the two most popular active ingredients that are on the market is prodiamine or dithiopyr. Now, you have a yearly allocation of each of these particular pre-emergents, meaning you can only put so much of it in your soil within a 12-month period. A common strategy that people use is they may put down one of those active ingredients for 6 months and the other active ingredient for the other 6 months. That way they guarantee full coverage throughout the entire year. So again, just to kind of wrap up, it's less about the active ingredient and more importantly, you're timely and when you actually put down your application. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at my soil temperature so we can make sure we're putting it down at the right time of year. All right, guys, so I'm going to use a little temperature probe here. It's basically like a meat thermometer. As you guys can see here, it says 82.6 degrees and it's starting to go up here, as we're outside. So let me go ahead and stick this in the soil here and we'll see what our soil temperature is. Now it looks like it's dropping. We're down to 85, 84, 83, 82. Again, we're still above 75 degrees, which is where we want to be. 81. Well, still dropping. All right, so now we're down to 77.7. Again, we're still above 75. I don't think it's going to get to 75. So now is that perfect window for us to put in our pre-emergent. All right, guys, so now that we know our soil temperature is 77.7 degrees or 77.1 or somewhere in that range, the one thing I want you guys to remember is that what we're looking at is an average. So one day it may be warmer, one day it may be cooler. Now, one way of getting your soil temperature, if you do not want to use a thermometer, is you can go online and you can basically search the average soil temperatures by zip code of where you live. And that will help you determine the right time of year for you to be able to put down that pre-emergent. The one thing I'll always say though, it's better to go early than too late. Because once those seeds start to germinate, it's not going to kill the weed. So if it already started to germinate, that pre-emergent's too late. So get it down early enough so that way it can go to work. So that way when those weed seeds germinate, they never come to fruition. So with that, let's kind of talk about what I'm going to be using on my lawn. All right, so this is the actual pre-emergent I went with last fall. Now, this is made by Sunnyland. It does say fertilizer plus herbicide. And the reason why it says fertilizer is because there's 7% potassium that's in this pre-emergent. Now, one of the things I did not like about this particular fertilizer, and let me go ahead and actually take a little scoop out. So one of the things I did not like, as you guys can see here, it looks like little rocks. And not that that's a problem. Now, one of the things I was noticing as I was mowing in the fall season, a lot of these rocks wouldn't actually break down. And that did concern me because these have to really break down in order for it to get into the soil and be able to go to work. Now, I don't think there was anything I did wrong just because I did use a heavy amount of irrigation. I believe I even had some rain that time of year, and it still was not necessarily fully breaking down, which I didn't necessarily like. I'm not saying it did not work, but at the same time, I was not too happy about that fact. Now let me show you guys what I'm going to be using this year because it is a slightly different strategy that I'm taking versus in the prior years. So this is what I'll be using on my lawn today. It is a little bit of a different strategy than I've taken in years past because this particular pre-emergent, not only is a pre-emergent, it also is an actual fertilizer. And the formulation of the fertilizer is 1803. Which means it has 18% nitrogen, 0% phosphorus, and 3% potassium. And the reason why I'm choosing to go with this particular fertilizer is because my lawn is still actively growing. I was going to put down a fertilizer treatment either way, so I figured this year this might be a good option to be able to kill two birds with one stone. Now, as far as the pre-emergent is concerned, the active ingredient is dithiopyr. And the reason why I'm choosing to go with dithiopyr during the fall season is simply because I've already used up my prodiamine allocation for the entire year. Meaning I cannot safely put any more prodiamine into my soil for the remainder of this year. Typically, dithiopyr tends to work better in the spring, and currently the way I have it set up is in reverse. And the reason why dithiopyr is a good option for you in the springtime is because of the fact that it does have some backwards capability. Meaning if you have young crabgrass that's starting to grow, this dithiopyr can be able to take care of that and act as a weed killer. Even though dithiopyr is a good option, I probably wouldn't recommend this particular blend being a fertilizer and pre-emergent during the springtime, is because typically when you throw down your pre-emergent in the spring, your lawn is not actively growing. And that's why I wouldn't necessarily recommend this during spring, but in the fall, where my lawn is still actively growing, I think it'll be a good option. All right, guys, let me give you a quick shot of the lawn here before I throw down my pre-emergent. Now, you're going to see some discoloration. You have some scalping that's going on that happened the last time I used my catalyst. However, we're going to notice some discoloration, as you guys can see there. Now, the reason why you're seeing some discoloration there is because I applied some Celsius at full rate to be able to kill off a lot of spurge that I'm battling with this time of year. So I'm very optimistic that the fertilizer I'm throwing down here is going to really revive the color and really bring my lawn back, because I still have a little bit of time in this growing season just because the temperatures in my area are still in the hundreds. That's right, in the hundreds this week. It may cool down next week, but at the same time, it is still actively growing, which is why I chose to go with the pre-emergent plus fertilizer. So in order to measure out my fertilizer, I'm going to use a 5-gallon bucket along with the luggage scale that you guys can see here. Now, I picked up this luggage scale on Amazon. It works out really, really well. So for me to be able to measure out exactly how much fertilizer I'm going to need for my lawn. All right, and just to kind of show you guys how it works, as you guys can see here, my bucket weighs 1.6 pounds. Now, what I really like about this is I'm able to zero it out. Now, when I'm adding in my fertilizer, the weight is only accounting for the fertilizer and not the bucket. I'll go ahead and link this luggage scale in the description below if you're interested in picking one up. All right, guys, so just a tip for you. Make sure anytime you're pouring out fertilizer, do it on top of concrete. Do not do it on top of your grass, because if you spill it, you may have some problems on your hand. All right, I'm going to see how much that is right there. Based on the weight of this bag, it's probably about a half a bag that I'm going to need. As you guys can see there, did drop some fertilizer on the ground, we'll be able to sweep that up fairly easily. All right, you can see there we have 15 pounds. We need about another 9 pounds to be able to top it off. That should be pretty close. All right, as you guys can see there, 25.1. That's pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and just stick with that. All right, so into the hopper it goes. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the prill here. All right, so as you guys can see here, I think these prills are definitely going to work much better to be able to get down into the canopy. Now, they're not necessarily a greens grade prill, but they're not too bad of a size, so definitely happy with the way that looks. That way I'll be able to get good distribution, along with it being able to drop down into the canopy. All right, guys, so all that's left is to go ahead and water it in. Now, anytime you're throwing down any liquid or granular pre-emergent, you absolutely want to make sure you do water it in. The pre-emergent will not be able to go to work until it's been absorbed into the soil, or even a granular fertilizer absolutely requires you to be able to water it in. Now, I think a lot of people get confused on whether or not I need to water in any particular products. The rule I use is generally whenever you have something that needs to get into the soil, such as fertilizer, pre-emergent, insecticide, fungicide, those type of things definitely need to be watered in. Now, any type of treatments that you're doing which go onto the actual grass, such as a herbicide, a liquid fertilizer, some plant growth regulator, those products generally are not watered in. But again, just as a rule of thumb, anything into the soil definitely needs to be watered. Anything on top of the soil, you generally leave on the lawn. All right, guys, so I really hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It's always fun able to put these things together for you guys. I feel like right now, as we're going into the fall season, I have a lot more things lined up, as far as content. I think that has a lot to do with the catalyst that I just recently picked up. So again, thank you for all your great support. Give me a thumbs up on this video. It always helps me out. And make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And remember, as always, put down that pre-emergent early and be excellent and party on.